Hello and welcome back to the Dandelion Diaries. Today we're going to be talking all about habit trackers, logs, yearly, quarterly, weekly, the whole shebang. So I get lots of questions about my habit trackers and logs, and most of them being what do you like to track? And the second one being, how do you keep up with it? So I'm going to kind of break this down a little bit as best I can and start off with, what do I track? So these are 3 of my planners that I have this year for 2023. I have a health planner here, a garden planner, and then my common planner, which is becoming kind of like a catch-all, which is similar to the 𝗦𝘂𝗽𝗏 that I have. So I'm going to start with my garden planner because it's the simplest one when it comes to tracking things. So something I like to track yearly is the temperature. And I specifically put this towards my garden is because my garden relies a lot on the weather, whether it be cold, hot, rainy, whatever. So at the beginning of this book specifically, I have a precipitation log / tracking, and then also temperature. So the precipitation is already pre-built into kind of the year at a glance. That's already built into this specific book. If I wanted to track this as well, I could do it very similarly to this, where I could write down rainfall, no rainfall, snow, whatever. It's just easier to do the dot method for both of these for me, so that way I can just look at it quickly and be like, okay, it was really cold these months, neutral these months, warm, and then really cold again, or whatever, depending on the season. I have noticed, since this is the second year that I have done this, that the trends are pretty consistent when it comes to the weather in my area, and that way I don't necessarily have to worry about too much of a change. The only thing that I have noticed does change is the precipitation, which is definitely something that I would recommend tracking if it's something you're going to be doing with a garden type space. Some other things that you could track for, gardening would be things on a more monthly basis, like, when you planted your seeds, when you harvested things, or what have you. I also like to track my chicken egg collection. So every week I have a small little tracker like this that has the tasks that I would generally do every single week, and one of those things being I collect eggs from our chickens. So I like to write down the number of eggs I collect, so that way I can know how many that we are getting and make sure that all of my chickens are healthy and laying eggs like they are supposed to, which they all are. So that's definitely something else you could look to track for in a garden type setting. I'll quickly jump into the health planner. So this is a monthly spread of my July of 2023, and it has quite a lot going on, so I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. So on one side of the page I have a sleep, mood, and stress tracker, a menstruation tracker with notes, and then also a kind of habit / eating / exercise tracker as well. So for the sleep, mood, and stress, the point of this being is so I can see the trends from month to month when it comes to how I'm sleeping. So I can literally put the pages right next to each other. Now, this is exactly the same information that's in this book down here, but I'll get to that in a minute. So when you track it this way on a month-to-month basis, you can just see how you're doing throughout the month, versus if you track it in more of a quarterly basis, it's a little different. Same thing for the menstruation. You could track this yearly, monthly, even weekly if you wanted to. I prefer to track it both yearly and monthly, just so I can see where my days are aligning with each other and if I am within a healthy cycle. As for notes and other things like that, completely personal preference. I like to track, date nights. I like to track vegetables. I like to track if I have any kind of weird symptoms like hiccups, or if I do any kind of major fasting or anything like that. And that way I have it documented in case something correlates up here. So like this day I did a really long fast and I slept a lot, which probably meant that my body went into complete repair mode. So that's kind of the reason for tracking this for myself. If you wanted to track something similar, feel free. Sleep is always something interesting to track for people, I feel like, because you can see how much rest you're actually getting. And same thing with mood. I feel like mood is really inconsistent and can depend on a lot of different factors in everybody's life between different stresses, and also, different events or family members or friends that you have relationships with and how their moods affect your mood. That being said, that's also why I add the stress in here, because I feel like sleep, mood, and stress all coincide together. So I feel like they're a really good group to put together. You don't necessarily have to track it in a line graph. You could track it in a bar graph. You could track it with dots if you wanted to, like certain different colored dots mean different things. It's really, you know, personal preference. I just prefer the simplified look of this versus colorful dots like I have in my other tracker. For the health / habit / food tracker, I guess, this is mainly just personal preference. I prefer to see statistics about my life. I love data. Data is really interesting to me. I love seeing trends. It's just a hobby of mine, I guess. A hobby within a hobby. But with this, you definitely don't have to track anything super specific. So I do have a lot of specific things on here, like sugar intake, if I had eggs, if I had dairy, if I had a cup of coffee that day. That is very, very specific, and it's something that I enjoy seeing about myself. But that being said, I could just jump that down to I had caffeine, I had a balanced meal, like done and done. I don't have to have any of these little individual little tasks to do. So with this one, I always get questions of how do you keep this so up to date? And the truth be told is once this is already set up, like I already have everything here, it takes 2 minutes at the end of the day. I go in, I'd be like, okay, did that, done. And it's really quick. So even if you have a really busy lifestyle, if you keep it simple like this, just black and white, literally this is all one pen. The only difference with this is that I wrote down the header and have a sticker or two on here. The rest of it is literally just one pen. And that is the beauty of this tracker to me, because I do have so much information that I'm jotting down. I need it to be very simple, and I need to have quick access to it, so I only have to spend a couple of minutes on this, because I feel like when you're doing habit trackers, if you're making it really, really extensive on yourself and really, you know, creative and colorful, it's awesome, but you don't necessarily always have the time for that. And I think we need to respect that within ourselves and whether we have time to update things like this or not. I also want to talk about weekly things for a health planner, just because that is another thing that I like to keep track of. So for instance, I like to keep track of a more symbolized list of that back tracker on the week itself. So whether I'm leaving the house since I work from home, whether I'm reading, whether I'm going to the gym and exercising, whether I'm practicing my languages, this is just some little ticks that I can make of goals that I'm trying to reach for this year. It more so is a reminder of, hey, did you do that on this day, versus a tracker for me here. It's like seeing it blank makes me want to fill it out, so I'll spend the 10 minutes, the 15 minutes doing whatever task it was supposed to be. Obviously, for things that are a little bit more extensive, like walking, running, gym, anything that involves a longer period of time, I can't necessarily squeeze that in at the end of the day like I could things like my meditation, my Spanish, or my reading. So those things I would probably want to look at this at the beginning of the day. So with that being said, depending on what time you reference your planner or your habit tracker or whatever, make these attainable goals for you. If seeing it makes you want to grasp onto it more, then do that. If having it in a more monthly style is better, then do that. It's really, like I said, totally up to you how you want to go about tracking the things that you want to track. Now that we've kind of covered like yearly, weekly, monthly, let's talk a little bit about quarterly. So this is a new planner for me this year. This is the Common Planner. I've talked about this in so many of my videos. It's one of my favorites. So with this one, it has quarterly spreads, and I love that it has quarterly spreads because it doesn't just have one side, it has two sides. So I literally have the same information that is in my health planner in this book, but I can look at it at 3 months at a time. So if you were to have something that you wanted to look at for 3 months at a time, this would be a really good setup for that. Obviously, everybody's a little bit different. Some people like to write things down, track things over here, write things down over here. Doesn't really matter, whatever your preference is. All I have to say is this is the one I get the most questions about with updating, and specifically the little cross hatch marks that I make over here. So I'm going to zoom you guys in and I'm going to show you exactly how I make these marks. So I went ahead and flipped to the August page. So this is just the second page, and I am going to update one of the days that I am recently working on here. So what I'm going to update is that I have this little leaf right here, and that means veggie to me. So I had veggies on all of these days that I've made this little crosshatch mark. As you can see, I have an empty box here. I did have veggies on this day, which is today. And so I'm going to go ahead and fill this in. So the way this works is I literally am going to just connect the largest line together. So I'm going to draw this line to this line, and that is going to extend like this. So all I'm doing is basically creating a square like this, but only a quarter of it. So then what I do is I connect the next two lines like this. And then lastly, the little lines like this. So that's all it is. It's literally just 5 dashes in different lengths, and you just flip each side over and over again to achieve this look. Now, this does take a little bit more time than obviously just a simple dot, even a colored dot, but I think it looks really cool, especially if it's all filled in, and that is one thing that keeps me coming back to fill in this tracker. I want it to look like an awesome grid pattern by the end of the month. Which brings me to, how do I keep up with all of these different trackers? Okay, so how do I keep up with all these different trackers? Well, the truth is, I just dedicate 5-10 minutes a day to update all of them. So for the temperature tracker here in the back, I could update this every week. I can just wait till the end of the week, pull the weather data, and just do it all once really quick, really fast, easy with the dot markers that I like to use, which are the Zig Clean color dots. Since I have everything color coded, it doesn't take me very long. I look at the temperature, I make the dot, I move on with my life. For the health tracker, I've already kind of explained this a little bit. I literally just take 5 minutes at the end of every day, make a dot, make a not dot, whatever it may be. It takes me only a few minutes to do it, and seeing that it's full also helps me come back and update it regularly. Obviously, there are going to be days that I don't make it, or I don't have my planner with me, or whatever. When that happens, I just take my best guess. We shouldn't be so hard on ourselves with this. Like, this is a tool to help us or keep us entertained, even just because it's data about our lives. If you miss a day, you can leave it blank. If you miss a day, you can go back and fill it in with what you think you did. It really is up to you. It doesn't have to be this whole pressure, anxiety of filling this out. Same thing with this one here. This is probably my most complex tracker I've ever done, especially with all of those hash marks. Like, this takes me longer than the simple dot method, but it looks cool. And so me going back in to fill it in, it's almost like a therapy. Like, it helps me draw in a way, but in a very simple way. So much to the point that, like, I'm checking off 2 things in my brain at once. It's like a satisfying task, I guess is the best way to put it. But like I said, you don't have to do this. Just do a simple dot, make it a color dot, whatever works best for you in your situation. The last thing I want to talk about is kind of different trackers that you can do on a yearly, monthly, and weekly basis. So I tend to change up what I track, at least for my health and for my catch-all planner. Usually my garden planner stays the same with temperature and precipitation because that's something I look at year after year. But for a yearly tracker, you can do things like I said, temperature, or even your menstruation. I've seen people use them as a reading tracker, like did you read that day? Make a dot on the yearly calendar. Same thing with exercise or vacation, just change the different color or make a different shape depending on what you did. Other things I've seen people track yearly are major events and appointments, any health-related things. So if you go to the doctor frequently, you can see when you are at the doctor's office, the hospital, getting infusions, injections, whatever it may be. You could also use it as like a medication tracker if you have to take daily medication. Just make sure that you are jotting down that you took your medication in a separate book that's personal to you. I don't know if I would share your medication on the internet if that's something you do. Same thing can go for date nights. I mean, you can track throughout the year when you went on a date. Let's say you go the same day every single month and you finally notice that's something that you and your partner do. I think that's really cool. Or you go maybe 2 or 3 times a month and you thought you went more or less. I think it's an awesome way to track that as well. You can also track school, kids' days, whatever you have going on with your kids. You can track spending, where you have like a green dot where you spent money, red dot where you didn't spend money, vice versa, whatever works for you. I've also seen people track their garden and planting on a yearly basis. So like they planted on this month and then it went all the way to this month before they harvested it. And I think that looks really nice as well. In a more monthly situation, you can track all of those exact same things. You can also track things like sleep, mood, and stress, which is something I like to do. You can track your eating habits, water habits, exercise, any kind of hobbies you like to do, like knitting, or if you have any kind of like sports you like to attend. Again, spending. You can also track your social media statistics, which is another thing that I like to do. I don't know if I talked about that, but I like to track them on a monthly basis just to see my growth in my social media or lack thereof if that were the case. Also, you can track gardening on a monthly basis, whether you have things that you're planting, harvesting, things that are dying, growing, whatever it may be. You can track sick days, headaches, any kind of pain. Same thing, more medical related, you can track your medications on a monthly basis versus a yearly, and also appointments. I'm sure there are dozens more options out there, but again, this is just some examples that I thought of for myself and things that I thought would be willing to be shared with you all. On a weekly basis, I would say this would be the most specific type of tracking you can do. If you're tracking it every single week, I think it should be something that you need to make sure is an accomplishment every single week. So things like your exercise, things like eating habits, time outside. If you're doing any kind of weekly challenge, whether it be like no spending, you have to journal every single day. If you want to practice art every single day of the week, any other hobby, and then same again, medications, you need to make sure you're accountable for those. It just depends on your situation and what works best for you. I feel like on a scale of broad to specific, weekly is the most specific and yearly would be the most broad. But again, it depends on what you like to track or what you don't like to track and how you would use this information for yourself. I hope this information was kind of valuable to you. I truly love habit trackers, logs, anything like that that shows me how I am progressing or keeping track of myself throughout the year, weeks, months, whatever it may be. I hope my explanation of how I use my trackers and how I keep track of them was valuable information to you. And if it was, please leave me a comment down below. I would love to see what you guys like to track and what you guys are interested in seeing more of. Maybe that I track, maybe I didn't explain something well enough. Just let me know. Other than that, I thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate and love you all so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.